Hello everyone, today I will talk about how to read data from a file using Python. The file can be txt file or the .dat file. And for today's task is we will read the file UFL and I will open this file and you will see it looks like. So this is the file and this is the file name and this is tell you there are 100 rows excluding these twos and for each rows they have the 100 columns except the number sequence. Now let's look at the task for today's lecture. We want to sum each row since the, the third row and print the result in the form the summation of the S row is a value. So I would want you to do like this. We want to get the number from the third row, that means from this row. We want to calculate each row the summation. That's the target of this lecture. And for our project 2, we will also read the data very similar to this the TIT file, and also for after today's lecture, we'll also assign a project 2 bonus question, which is worth 20 points. Now let's start it and see how can we read the data from the TXT file. And we will use a Python, and I will show you how to read the Python. And firstly, you want to make sure that your TXT file should be in the same folder with your code. Now let's open the code. If you use the PyCharm, that's fine. You also need to put the TXT file in the same folder. But I think most of students, they may use just the IDLE. So we use the simple the IDLE. And what we need is new one. Click the file, the new file, and we will write the code here. But before that, I will first save this is the file. In my desktop, I put the folder is lecture 18. So we give the name as lecture 18. And now we will write out the code. We bring the file. So the file name is ufl.t. So in the Python, if you want to read the file, the first line is we need use open, and I will tap here and give the name of this file is file1 equal to open parentheses. Then you need to put the file name, the ufl.txt, txt, and also you should put another the parameter is the reading mode. Here we only want to read the data, so we put the R. If you want to write data, you should use the W. Now let's read the data, and we want to first, for this data, we want to write this data line by line. This means this is the first line, and this is the second line. So we will first want to save this data in a list. Now we need to define a variable called list. List1 equal to square the bracket. Now we can read data from line by line. This is very also easier. The syntax is for each line in where. That's we in the file one, because we save our data the TXT file as the file 1, so we should be in file 1. And don't forget the semicolon. Then we should use put the value in the list 1. So it's like the previously, how can we assign a value in a list? We just put each line here. And now we read the data in the list. We can close this is the file. Now you can check whether we read this data correctly or not. We just use a print and list 1, and then we click the run model and see what it looks like. Okay, it shows the squeeze the test 600 lines, and seems it's large, but I think now we just read the lines, but we still want to put the lines in a list. We want to get each the string numbers, so we need to continue to do the operation. First, we want to remove the first 2 lines because we only want to calculate the summation from the 3rd line. Now we need to remove the first 2 lines. What we did is we first need to define a list. It calls my data equal to, and then we read the data in the list 1, and now we need to use the if function, the if else. We need to check the condition. If it is in the first or second line, we just continue. So what we did is we use the if each line if equal to the first line, it just apparent index is 0, or we copy this one. The second row is the 1 index. If this is happen, we use the keyword called the continue. We just skip this is a line. Otherwise, we will assign the value to my data list. So we use append for the each line. Now we have read the data from the second line, the 3rd line to the end. But there's one thing we need to figure out. Since for the TXT file, that's the whole line. The whole line is not split to each number. What we need is we want to get the number 1827. So we need a function, and in the Excel there's a hint. So if you want to split the whole line, you should use split to convert them to each word and store them in a list. For example, if we have a welcome to this workshop, and my list is you just split them and assign the value to my list. When you execute this, you will get my list as 4 strings. Welcome to this workshop. The same thing for us. We also need to split. So we need to define another the list and want to store the string in each line. So what we did is we also check for in every the value in range and its length. We want to know how many strings in my data. So we put my data, and then we use a split the function, and first split the whole line, and then assign the individual the strings to my list. We use my list dot append my data. We should do it one line by line. So use the I and put the function, a split function. Now we can see whether we get the right value. We can check the print my list. So now we will can print here. And run the model. First we need to save it. Yeah, it seems that's really large number, and my computer a little slow. Yeah, just wait. Okay, it seems that we store all the number in the my list, but that's really a large number. I don't want to do it. And now we get the value of each the lines. The next step is we want to do the sum of each line. How can we do that? Since this is a list, we don't want to do it line by line. Actually, we can define a function. That's the last time we learned how to define a function. If we define a function past the list in the parameter, then we can just use a function to calculate all lines. So we can do like this. Oh, this is, I don't know how can I click it. I want to really close it. Too slow. And force quit and open it again. I just delete this one. Now I don't want to print again. Now we want to define a function as sum. My sum, and you want to pass a parameter is for list. Now since the job is we want to print the sum of each line in the list, my list. So I will pass the value. The parameter called the my list, and we need to give initialize the temp sum is just equal to 0, and then we sum for one line by line for value in a list, and we will get sum equal to sum. We use the previous technique we learned, and also remember that you should convert the type of the value, because now we don't know the value is the integer or not. Since it shows a number, but if it's a string, we cannot do the sum. So that's why we need to first use the int function to convert this data type to the integer. Now we return temp sum. So this is how we define a function. That is, if give you a list, then you can get the sum. For example, if we define a list 2, I just show you the example is 1, 2, 3. Now you can print the sum of them, and you can call this function is mySum, pass the parameter list 2, and we will see what it looks like. We expect is 6. Let's see whether it's equal to 6. Yes, it's 6. That means we define this function correctly. Now we want to print the MyList. Since MyList has a two-dimensional, now first dimensional, that means they stores totally 100 rows, and then for each row we want to get the sum of the lines. Now let's print. We need to comment this and print the sum of each line. How can we do that? We use the for loop. For value in my list, and we use a print function. Is the summation of each line is now we need to call our function. Our function, sum function, we define is mySum, and pass the parameter is a value. So we can delete this one. This is just for the demonstration. Now we will see what it looks like, and click OK. Now it prints the number, each line, the summation of each line. But I don't know, based on this, I don't know which line is. So I want to is the sum of the line 1, this is line 2, this is line 3. So how can we achieve this? That's we need to use the previous technique. And what we do is you have the two options. The one option, maybe it's either one, we can do like this. We will copy. We need to know the value of, for each value we should know there's the index, but the value here is it's just the value. So we may change like this, like the I in range of 0 length. We want to know how many of my list. This is the easier way. And then we use a function. The function is here the summation of line. Now we need to put the parentheses. Then we put the I. That means the line I. If suppose the I from the 0, we need to put actually is +1, and we can delete this, and let's see whether it is the expected the result. Oh, there's the error. Let's see how can we fix it. So the value here is not equal. Oh, that. Yeah, so we cannot here we use the value. What we need is actually we need to get the list. Actually how can we get the value based on the index? So that is a square bracket past the index is I. Now let's double check and see whether it works. Oh, now it works. Great. Okay, we got what we want, and this is a example shows us how can we read the data, and for the I will I will stop here about today's lecture, but I will just basically show you how can we for the project 2 bonus. In the project bonus, actually I want you to read is another file. It's not this file, but it also has this similar pattern. The first two lines is not necessary. We only want to read data from the third row, but the task is not to sum each line. I only want you to sum the first 10 numbers. For example, if I want to sum the first 10 numbers, that includes 1 and 3000, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I only want you to sum these 10 numbers. And next line is also we want to from these 10 numbers. I don't want to ask you to send all the numbers. So how can you achieve this? How can you do that? I think what you want is you may change a little bit about the my function here. You can actually put as a list, but the list is not for every value. And you may just want to calculate the first 10 values. But here, I think you may need change a little bit, but I think you can do it. The similar way you can do, how can you check it is the first 10 numbers? You may use like this way, it's I in range. So you can get which number in your list. So I just give you this hint and I hope you can finish it by yourself. Thank you.